both pilots.
Can you fly this plane and land it?
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes, and I got Doc with me today, and we're going to talk about your favorite comic character ever, Wolverine. You ready for this?
Absolutely.
All right, so, this is your favorite character. I want you to let me know, what are the basic elements that make Wolverine one of the greatest comic heroes of all times?
Wolverine the thing that I always loved about the character is that he kind of took that anti-hero thing but added this really great element of kind of honor and nobility and this principle to what he does. He's not just, he's different than the Punisher in that way. The Punisher just goes after bad guys in general, but he doesn't care how he does it. Wolverine still kind of does. He doesn't necessarily like just, wait until you walk in the room and gutting you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, whereas the Punisher will just set up a claymore and just wait for you to walk through it. Whereas Wolverine, he'll meet you face to face and then he'll slaughter you. And it's like that kind of samurai nature to him, and that the Claremont and Miller miniseries really kind of played up, and that's the thing that I really like about him. He's very principled, but he also he does what other people won't do, and he's willing to kind of pay the moral and ethical price for that.
Yeah, he's always like the conscience of the team. Whenever he's on a team, like he's the gruff guy that you don't want to. He's your best friend, but you never know kind of what he's going to do. But he's always got that moral compass where whenever Wolverine decides to speak up on a subject, he's probably right.
Yeah, exactly. He doesn't talk a lot. He doesn't make speeches. He doesn't, and it was the thing that I disliked about the movies, with especially the second and third movie where he was the one making speeches and crap. He's not that guy, but he's the guy that he'll let you get away with anything. But if it's something that he won't do, then that it's something that nobody should do. If you want to still be a hero, he's kind of that like final line. He's that line in the sand where if you cross beyond what he's willing to do, you kind of start taking yourself out of hero territory.
Yeah, there's a few Marvel heroes that have that problem, but we're not here to talk about the Punisher and some of those more ambiguous heroes. We're going to talk about the Wolverine a little bit more. Now, he's not really, if you look at him, he's not really a powerful mutant. He's got some healing factor, and then, his adamantium skeleton that's been grafted onto him, by humans. But, he can't read minds. He can't control the weather. He's not really powerful when you compare him to a lot of the other X-Men. But, he's absolutely the standout of the team. Why is it that he rose above the other characters?
I think it's because he's a little more. He's Cyclops is kind of that the Captain America of the X-Men. He's the leader and the strategist. Nightcrawler's kind of the I guess you could say moral or religious kind of paragon of the team. Storm has that like nobility to her, and is very kind of, she's also has a lot of that leadership, but she's also very aloof. Colossus is kind of just the regular farm boy, but Wolverine's kind of he's that guy that's always there when you need him, but he'll also, he's the guy that won't immediately be right on your back. If you get into a fight with somebody, he's the guy that'll stand there and then wait. And if somebody tries to jump in and make it not a fair fight, he will even it up for you without question. He's that guy that He might be a dick, but he's always got your back. And I
It's
think
got a
there's
lot of like Ben Grimm in him, like he's kind of the heart and soul of the Fantastic Four in the same way that Wolverine kind of is for the X-Men.
Yeah, and he really is. I mean, I think initially with the original launch of the X-Men, Beast was kind of supposed to fill that role to some extent. But Wolverine did it better. Wolverine was, he's not the smartest guy on the team. He's not the fastest guy on the team. He's not the strongest guy on the team. He's not the best at anything except for what he does. Yeah, he's the best there is at what he does, but what he does isn't very pretty. I mean, that's his thing, and he's the guy that's going to get down in the muck and that has no problems getting dirty to do the right thing. And I think there's a little bit of that kind of pragmatism to Wolverine, whereas a lot of the rest of the team are a little more idealistic.
You know what? It's really interesting, with the character. We talk about tent poles here. You and I do about Marvel tent poles. You got your Spider-Man, your Avengers, X-Men. And Wolverine's really the only X-Men that can carry a series and be a tent pole to himself. Kind of not like Spider-Man. He's number one, but he's one of the few solo characters that can actually do it. That's part of a team, within Marvel. Why is it that he can carry a series when, Iron Man can't really do that?
Okay, well, now Iron Man has always had like a weird rogues gallery, and it's his rogues are a little cheesy. Whereas Wolverines are always weird. Wolverine has this whole hidden, because Wolverine's a guy that can exist outside the X-Men, whereas like Cyclops and Colossus, Nightcrawler, a lot of the other X-Men are intrinsically tied to it. Whereas Wolverine, he was already the loner, and his ability to have a lot of those, when you're a loner, you're going to have a lot of, your own stories. You're going to have a lot of your own history that's not always completely tied to your friend group or your team. And now Captain America does it well with having all the World War II connections to a lot of his bad guys. Whereas, Iron Man ends up really with a lot of either other guys in armor suits, or the interplay, and something that's not really acceptable anymore, which is that kind of like Western progress, Eastern mysticism, the conflict between the two, and that's one of the reasons why they've kind of sidelined characters like the Mandarin in recent years. So Iron Man's rogues gallery, well, let's just be honest, they kind of suck. The living laser's kind of cool. Ghost is kind of cool, but they kind of turned, they stole Ghost and gender swapped him and then stuck him in the Ant-Man movie, or her in the Ant-Man movie. And Whiplash is another guy in a suit. Ironmonger is a guy in a suit. Crimson Dynamo is a guy in a suit. It's only so interesting to see Iron Man essentially fight bad iron people so often. Whereas Wolverine's rogues gallery kind of run the gamut. I mean, he's got everything from World War One, and World War II villains to history during the Spanish Revolution. And then he has all of his hidden history with, from pre-origin, where you didn't know what his real, past was. So he has all this stuff, and he's, plus he has his time in all the different militaries he served in Weapons plus the times where he's been just kind of roaming around the world, Madripoor, Japan. He's made enemies everywhere on the planet, and so you can kind of, with a life as long as his and a lot of different kind of phases to his life, he's got a lot of interesting kind of layers to him that a guy like Tony Stark really doesn't. Tony was a guy that he was a weapons manufacturer that made a weapon that he now uses so that he doesn't have to make weapons. That's the extent of Tony Stark.
Yeah, I agree. That's the thing that's really great about Wolverine. He's like such a versatile character. And then, because he's not so powered up, he's really susceptible to just about every villain can probably do something to put a dent in him. But he's got that ferocious will that never give up, that fighting spirit to where he can always push through. And I think that has a lot to do with it.
Yeah. And that kind of never he's, what he reminds me of? He reminds me of freaking Rocky. He's not the biggest guy, he's not the strongest guy, but he's relentless. And you can beat the crap out of him and he's going to keep getting up. He has that Captain America in him that I can do this all day. He's got that, but he's also got a little bit of the Punisher in him. He's kind of this little, they take little aspects of other characters, and Wolverine's kind of this great amalgamation of all of them. And that's something that not a lot of other characters that have, especially not many of the other X-Men. And it's one of the reasons why they're all a little, as interesting as they are, they don't have the kind of layers to them that a character like Spider-Man does, the character like Wolverine does, like Captain America does, that even Thor, they all have layers to them that help them be able to carry solo series for long periods of time.
So do you think that was like the intent of the character when he was introduced in Hulk, that he was going to be this character that kind of spanned time and that people could really relate to? Or do you think that was just developed, by Claremont and some of the other writers?
I think it was almost exclusively Len Wein as editor and writer, but mostly by Claremont, because he was kind of a great blank slate character for Claremont and Byrne to play with during the early X-Men, from like Giant Size through X-Men 94 through the mid 140s. He was a great kind of blank slate character. He was kind of a throwaway character for Wolverine or in Hulk. They didn't design him to be throwaway. They just didn't know what they were going to do with him next. But then Len Wein wanted to use him again in Giant-Sized X-Men. It didn't really, he added a little bit to him, but not a lot. But it was when Claremont got his hands on him, he realized how cool this character was, because Len imagined him being like 20 some years old, blonde haired, and that the claws were actually part of the gloves. That was the original intent of the character. Claremont managed to take this kind of blank slate character, totally turn him on his head. Instead of making him a teen or a 20 something, he made him the old man on the team. And now you got somebody coming in as an old man already, like with this whole secret history that you've never heard of before. And now you have a lot of stuff that you can play with that you don't necessarily have with a 20 something character. And you get to fill in all this history. And I don't think it was intended to be that way, but I think Claremont liked the design. He liked that kind of gruff military. But he was military, but not really. He wasn't that like really kind of straight as an arrow military. He was that guy that was always on the verge of getting busted out of the military.
So
and he
Claremont took this this blank slate and did a whole lot with it. Is there another writer that you think writes Wolverine the best besides Claremont?
Oh, there's two, Larry Hama and Frank Thierry. Larry Hama filled in so much stuff with characters like Cyber, the Shiva Project, a lot of the Professor, not Professor X, but like the Professor, Dr. Cornelius, a lot of these other characters that really started kind of being important during the Larry Hama era. And then Frank Thierry for kind of bringing Wolverine, keeping him grounded as a superhero, and kind of bringing him back to that. He has his Wolverine kind of alter ego, and then he also has like the Logan side of him, and keeping those sides of him a little distinct. I like that, because he's not just a guy that runs around in a costume all the time. He's not Spider-Man. He's a guy that's hanging out in a wife beater and a cowboy hat, smoking a cigarette, riding a Harley around too. So he's got that aspect of him that a lot of other characters don't. They're the same guy in and out of the costume, and Wolverine is too, but you see different sides of him played up, whether he's in the costume or not in the costume. And that's something that's that guys like Larry Hama and Frank Thierry, because they're basically kind of the two real voices on him, in my opinion, over after at least for the solo title, especially during the solo title, because I think they had the longest runs on him too. Other than Claremont might have been longer, but it's close.
So you've been talking about Wolverine's costume. I call it a uniform because I was in the military. Costume is what you put on your kids. Uniform is what you put on to go and fight in the battle. But Wolverine's had a lot of different looks. Of course, the two most memorable are his blue and gold, his classic look, and then his gold and tan. What's the best Wolverine uniform in your opinion, and who is the definitive Wolverine artist in your opinion?
I've always been partial to the brown and tan. Now, partially that's because that's what he was wearing when I first came into reading X-Men back in like the late 80s, like 1987. So I've always been partial to the brown and tan. I liked the novelty of bringing back the blue and yellow, but I really thought that should have been short term. Wolverine's not a flashy superhero, and that's the thing. Like the blue and yellow seems more flashy and show offy, and it's also it's kind of like Batman having like the yellow logo or the yellow circle around his the yellow oval around his bat symbol. It's always kind of weird. And okay, fine. It's I like the Batman logic of it. It's a target, because then it's going to hit him in the vest, in his body armor. But Wolverine, his whole body is body armor. He doesn't need that. He needs a little bit more stealth to him. And I always thought that the brown and tan was a little stealthier. And as a result, it was I always felt that was kind of the quintessential Wolverine costume. The one is the yellow and blue is a superhero uniform, and whereas the brown and tan is it's a assault uniform. That's, I don't know. I'm weird about that one.
And like I said, who's your favorite artist? Like who does Wolverine the best?
Oh, it's kind of a toss up between Mark Silvestri and Jim Lee. I would have to, but you know what? I'm going to have to go with Mark Silvestri, between his run on Uncanny X-Men and his run on the solo X-Men title. I love him. The top three in order would be Silvestri, Lee, Adam Kubert. There's my top three.
Well, hey Doc, I am digging this Wolverine conversation, but I gotta kind of go. Can we finish this up tomorrow?
Absolutely, sir.
All right, thanks, buddy. I will talk to you tomorrow.
All right, brother. Take care.
If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. I would appreciate it very much. It helps us attract more views for the channel. Subscribe for future commentary, comic book news, and reviews. And don't forget to ring the bell for notifications. If you want to talk comics, movies, and much, much more, you can follow me on Twitter at Wes_from_TC. With that, Salamat Po, and I'm out.